Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
What I've learned through doing this podcast is that there's nothing about my humor that's acceptable to the common public. Why is that? Because almost every time we start out a podcast, I'm being told, you can't say that. Are you kidding? Do you know how many people you're going to offend? To which you're all wondering, what was it he was going to say this week?
You're not going to find out.
You're not going to find out.
Yeah.
People can be uptight, though.
Yeah. People have been offended before being around us.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm okay with offense, but it's not helpful to changing your life or transforming other people's lives, is it?
If you offend people?
If you're offended all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the most debilitating obstacles to transformation is offense.
Yeah.
Speaking of transformation today, I got there.
Very good.
Got there. We're going to talk about small beginnings, the hidden season, what's cultivated in the hidden and nothingness, that what we do there will actually create the transformation and the platform and the opportunities for the dreams that we have inside of our lives.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it is too. I had it.
I decided what we were doing this podcast on. I literally created this content.
I didn't though. Abby did.
No. Actually, you did kind of.
I did kind of.
We tag teamed this.
So, Sammi, thank you for being here. Do you want to give an introduction to Sammi a little bit more?
Sammi
and why she's here?
Phenomenal in a lot of different ways. We've had her husband on here before, Spencer Robbins. He talked about man body image issues, and he did a phenomenal job. Y'all should listen to it.
He's funny.
He is a funny guy.
And Sammi and her husband run Alive and Free, which is actually, I'll let you explain it before I butcher it. But Sammi, we're having her on this podcast because me and Justin have such a value for people who are actually doing the work in the hidden seasons, behind closed doors. There's a lot of people, pastors, counselors, Instagram influencers, life consultants, life coaches, business coaches. Like, there's a lot of people who claim to know something about life that you should follow. Authors, speakers.
They're influencing.
Yeah. And we have met so many of them because we've run in a lot of circles. And I very rarely meet somebody who is behind the scenes in the hidden places, really, really doing the work. And Sammi is one of those people that we have seen over and over again, consistently going on her journey of growth and healing, and then leading from that place. And it's such a different place to lead from when you lead from authority and experience and vulnerability than when you lead from head knowledge and what you think is true. And so we have her on, and I love her dearly. She's one of my close friends.
Can I add a little bit to the introduction as well? So I have been pretty in awe of you because I've had the opportunity to personally partake in pieces of your journey of transformation and stuff. And I have watched you be someone who is so bold and courageous in digging into the things inside of your heart and being challenged. Like, one of the things that, again, I'm really in awe of is I've had the capacity to challenge you historically and watch you rise up to the occasion of those challenges and not get offended with me, but actually go, okay, yep, I need to look at that. I need to do things with that. And I think that that's really powerful. So there's this beautiful humility inside of your heart that when being challenged, you don't take it as an identity assessment. You really take it as an assessment of like, oh, this is what's here. What can I do to become more free? And I love that about you. And so I really honor and respect the love that you give away to people. And like she said, the process that you've personally been on inside of your life, and that you don't just stop. You haven't come to a place of I've arrived. You keep staying in that posture of being willing to be challenged, whether by people or by yourself.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I feel so honored. I feel really honored to be in this conversation too, because it's such a massive value for me. I watch on Instagram, and I see the facades that people put up, and I see the facades in businesses that people put up.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of stories, or I have a lot of personal connection. And I love authenticity so much. So I want whatever's being presented to be backed by something. And so I love that I get to talk about this, and I feel honored by both of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Justin, I sat in Justin's office. We've only had maybe 10 sessions, maybe 20. But the first...
I love how it sounds like a low number.
Knows?
I think 20 is still like a significant chunk.
I didn't walk with you for years Spencer did, but you've radically changed my life because of how much you changed Spencer's life, that it feels like I have way more equity with you than I do. But I remember sitting in Justin's office the first time, snot dripping out of my nose. I was heaving, crying. He's like going after my daddy wounds. And I'm like, I have so many dad wounds. And he sits in front of me and he wipes the snot off of my nose.
Yeah.
And I just melted. And I just was like, I'm safe. I'm safe here. Yeah. So your love has impacted me like crazy. And getting to do life and friendship with Abby has wrecked my world in all of the best ways. I love you both.
I love you.
So I run Alive and Free. I started it 2 weeks into marriage, which was probably not the best idea, but it has been very blessed. And I do believe we stewarded it really well. But my intention wasn't to start a big business. My intention was I've gotten a lot of inner healing. I've taken a lot of ownership for my stuff. I have a lot of fruit that's been being produced out of my life for years now. And I want to be able to give that away. And I didn't know what it was going to look like, and I didn't care, and I didn't have agenda. I just felt passionate about, I had mentored women, mostly roommates, any way that I could. And I had watched them get these breakthroughs through a lot of what I love is bringing people into encounters with God and then teaching them how to reproduce that on their own. And then adding emotional health tools into that. So I had done that for years and I wanted to give it away. So I started doing one-on-ones and got some like laps underneath my belt and got good and recognized like I can actually reproduce this and I'm actually seeing sustainable results happen. And so then we scaled it. And when you scale something and when you start business, you have to like niche it down. So I was like, okay, what do I have the most authority in? I sure as hell don't have the most authority in marriage. I was only engaged for 4 months. And I only dated for 4.5 months. And I didn't date before that really. So I sucked at all of those things. But what I have a lot of authority in is working with single Christian women because I was a single Christian woman for my entire healing journey. And so I was like, this is what I can do. And since even now, I won't work with married people because I'm 2.5 years into marriage, which makes me a 2.5-year-old. So why would a 2.5-year-old be coaching someone on that? So that's what we do. We work with single Christian women and we do the basics of emotional health and getting them prepared to do relationship well.
That's so good.
So you started, tell us about like the hidden seasons where you were actually building things that you end up using now in your business, but you probably had no idea back then that you'd ever be using it.
No. Mine was kind of torn. Like so much of my healing journey was with God. I've gotten a lot of consulting and I've gotten a lot of leadership, but my initial healing journey started in the secret place with God. And I had a really good friend that would challenge me and ask me questions and validate my pain. And that helped me recognize how wounded I actually was. And then with that pain that came up, I would go into the secret place with God and I would have these radical encounters. I would have all these memories that came up and he would take me back into those childhood memories and refather me basically. And then gave me a lot of emotional understanding of what was going on. So here's what was happening in your heart. Here's how it affected you. Here's what your mom was doing. Here's why your dad did that. And so I was getting a lot of emotional understanding about things based on how he was fathering me. And that happened for years. And in the secret place, I don't know about you guys, but when you're in the secret place, all you hear about is the things that God has for you and how much he loves you. I'm preparing you for this. This is who you are. This is how I see you. This is why I love you. This is who you are as a woman. This is who you're going to impact. So he is constantly giving me vision and pouring pouring identity into me. And so you have that thing where you're like, first, this is all I care about is intimacy with you. Mm-hmm. I'm not here for you to tell me who I am. I'm here because love is here and I want to be like love and with love. But simultaneously, when you get that kind of love, you start stepping into your identity. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that God was going to do really big things in me. But the more I spent time with him, the less I cared about the end result of anything.
Yeah.
And I remember, even doing conferences and ministry school, seeing the way people would lead and impact and feeling that hunger of like, I want to be like that. And every time I took that hunger or the need for impact or significance or whatever it was, every time I took that to God, it felt like it got stripped of me. I just didn't want it anymore. I didn't need it anymore. And the more I surrendered that and the more I just got connected to love, I was like, I don't care what happens with my life. If I'm never seen, if I'm never known, then it will genuinely be enough for me. And I knew that I wanted that to be my heart posture before God gave me anything.
Yeah.
I had that understanding of like, I want to be so stripped of needing that before.
Of needing significance and approval from the outside.
Yes.
And accolades from people.
Yes. Because sometimes if you're not in that place of surrendered, if we get a blessing, sometimes it reinforces that where I'm at almost earned this or deserved this. And so I think sometimes we don't often get stripped of that thing if we're not willing.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want anything that would pull me away from God or pull me away from the purity of heart that I wanted to live with as a woman. And so I carried the understanding of like, I want to know that I'm stewarding, even if it's just my time with God, I want to know that I'm stewarding that in my heart and my character really, really well before you ever bless me with things, God. Mm-hmm. I want the things to be a gift added because I sought you.
Yeah.
And so I'm only 26 years old too. I'm such a baby. I thought I'd be in my 30s or 40s or 50s before the fruit of my life was actually outward. Mm-hmm. And I was actually okay with that. If I'm just a mom and things happen later in life, I'm okay with that. But everything happened a lot faster. But I did have a good 8 years of hiddenness and being in a secret place.
Yeah, I think that even to kind of define the secret place, it's those times in life where it feels like nothing is really happening. It doesn't feel like there's a light shining on your life. It's maybe going through the humdrums of like, oh, I'm just doing this thing in front of me. It doesn't feel like there's necessarily an assigned purpose to it, or it's notable, or anything about this. It's just, I'm here. I am experiencing life. I am doing the best with what I know how to do right in front of me. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, one of the things you talked about was the idea of your ego was getting broken down. So our egos need to have this healing, this truth that happened to it. There's parts of us that are in need of identity through performance, like, oh, I'm valuable, I'm lovable, my life matters because of some external circumstances validate that, rather than something is cultivated inside of us, a higher truth that says, no, you are beautifully and wonderfully created, and that is all that matters. And it's in those places of nothingness where we have the capacity to choose into this higher truth and adopt this higher truth that says, no, I'm good. I'm a wonderful creation just as it is. And what happens inside of that, as the ego is stripped away, or this need to perform is stripped away, that pride or that arrogance disappears. Pride or arrogance is me really just going, I need to prove to the world that I'm better than everyone so that I can have significance. But when that is stripped away, there's this humility that's formed in that nothingness. And that's where strength and stability is found. Humility is this settledness inside of us that goes, I learned something in nothingness about the value of who I am as a creation or a created being. And all of a sudden, I don't have to prove myself to anyone. I don't have to tear other people down. I don't have to make them feel less than me. I'm not living in a sense of comparison to the world around me. I'm just seeing my beauty and the beauty of humanity in front of me as well. And that's really a powerful posture to be inside of.
Yeah. I think we're wanting to encourage people in this season, because I know 2020 is like a crazy year. People are having to adapt. People are changing their life visions. People are trying to figure out, who am I going to be? What do I want to do with my life now? What really matters? Where am I what am I going towards? And there's lots of seasons like that, you know, and lots of things can bring it on. If you lose your job, all of a sudden you can be in a like redefining your purpose. Or if you end a relationship, or you move cities, or someone died. Like there's lots of things that can happen in life that throw us into that season of contemplating, who am I and where do I want to go from here?
Yeah.
And I think about like in our lives, it was when we got married. We quit our jobs, and we traveled around the US, which we've talked about before on the podcast in the beginning. If you haven't heard about it, check it out. But so we're traveling around the US in our truck, not working, and both of us are like, so our lives have transitioned. It threw our lives into transition. We're now having to figure out marriage. And now we're like, what do we want to do with our lives? Where do we want to go?
Who do we want to become?
Yes. And those questions, I think we have I don't know how to quite say this, but there's two different paths that we could have taken, which is we could have chosen to try to just push through and make stuff happen for our lives.
Yes.
Or we could have chosen what we did, which was to embrace the season of hiddenness and the season of nothingness, and to actually dig into what was right in front of us. And so do you want to talk a little bit about our journey and how that led to what we're doing now?
Well, it's interesting because I know this was a side note. There's a resistance on each of those paths, but there's a different type of resistance that you'll experience. There'll be a resistance that feels like it steals all of your peace when you go down a path that is like not the. Let me put it like this: there's an invitation to submitting to a process that will actually bring you alive. It will come with rocky roads of suffering, loss, facing fears and difficulties inside of us. Then there's another one that's not necessarily an invitation that we push into, that we will create a lot of pain and problems for us that are unnecessary, that aren't even dealing with the root issues of life that would liberate us. So it's almost like pouring hot lava on your own head for no reason whatsoever. Well, there's already a volcano that I need to deal with inside of me. So I'm having a good visual. Double lava. Double lava. And so, but there's something worthwhile, because there's something that when we submit to the invitational process, where something is produced, where diamonds come out of the rough inside of those experiences. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we get into our conversations here.
And I just want to say too, like there's so not a right way. Like I know what we're doing is putting dialogue and conversation around this journey.
Right.
And I think for all three of us, like one thing we're all passionate about is that we would do things from a place of authority and authenticity and overflow.
Right.
But even hearing like Justin and Abby's story, I heard it, I don't know, a year or two ago. And I remember hearing the way that you guys did things, and you had a lot of years of just fighting for your marriage. And that was the focus and the goal. And I loved that, because I love the hiddenness thing. I love being in secret. I love the intimacy with God. And I have an Enneagram 3 husband who is a achiever to his core.
Totally.
And he's done a lot of work and growth, and he is profound and powerful and wise, carries a lot more authority than I do. I think in emotional health, he's amazing. But, you know, even in us building the business really early on, he got excited. He was really excited. He wanted to build something, and he could do it without going on the emotional health journey too, and it'd probably be successful.
Yeah.
And there are those people
Absolutely.
who I think can do that.
Yeah.
And I think it quenches a sustainable, healthy process.
Right.
But I remember there were two things. One, I started getting so burnt out.
Yeah.
And I started resenting the business. I just was like, I don't even know if I'm passionate about this. I don't think that I want to do it. I don't know if I believe in it. I believe in that I can help people get freedom,
Right.
but I don't believe in this means to an end and the way that we're doing it, because it was all new for me. And at one point in time, Spencer, who really wanted to hold on to it and make it successful, he, after holding on to it for a little while, was like, okay, let's blow it up. Like, let's let it burn to the ground. I don't want this if it means that we're disconnected, and I want God to be first and marriage to be next. And so I'm willing to let it go. And watching him be willing to surrender it. And I've watched him do that for the last 2 years. Every time it became a threat or had power over us or him or our marriage, him being willing to actually let it burn to the ground has, I think, been a springboard for him to actually have success, but in a sustainable way where he can build and achieve, but from a healthy place where he's like, I'm not going to let this have power over me.
Yeah.
And there were other times I remember talking with you about it, Justin, where I was like, I don't know if I like this. And you said to Spencer, something deep inside me hopes that you hit rock bottom.
That's so nice. And kind thing.
He wasn't happy about that, I don't think.
He wasn't happy. And I think it was, and he called you out on it too. He's like, I don't want it to need to be like what you went through. I think I could do it differently. And maybe he needed to go through that. Maybe he still needs to go through it. Maybe he doesn't. But I loved your leadership in that too, where you're like, actually, I remember you said rock bottom is the springboard into the things that God has for you. And sometimes if we don't go there, we can't actually get to where God's calling us to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think that rock bottom looks different for every person. And rock bottom is ultimately facing our greatest fears, no matter what it costs us. And once we get to that fear, we get liberated from that fear to become the fullness of who we're made to be. And so that's why I value, like Abby and I went on this journey of, for me, especially in our early years, I hit rock bottom. And I knew the price that it cost me, but also the gift that it was and the immensity that came back. Because for me, I came to the end of who I thought I needed to be as a man. Like, I believed that I had to provide financially. And if I didn't, I'm not a man. And if I wasn't achieving certain things, I wasn't a man. And I started going down this list of experiences where all of a sudden I was really out of control. I realized I could not control my life. I could participate with it, but I could not control it. And that for me was rock bottom when I realized I cannot control what's happening externally.
Well, and I think for us, I want to just go back to kind of sharing like our story of how we did it. So in our first year of marriage, we definitely had a lot of stuff come up and didn't know what we were going to do, but knew that we needed to work on our stuff, knew that we needed to figure out how to do relationship, how to communicate. I would say until that point, both of us had been spiritual enough that we could get by without very many emotional intelligence tools. And so we actually had to learn how to communicate and how to do conflict and how to work through
what
stuff.
Actual connection was.
And when I got married to Justin, like we both were so broken. And I don't say that, like we're also actually still broken. We're just healthier broken. Like
we're better versions of messy.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. We're better versions of messy. But I remember like I had so much self-hatred and so much shame and so much like death and suicide. And I remember Justin just praying like, God, what do I do with this crazy woman? I had a hormone disorder that made me have huge emotional outbursts on a regular basis. That was like
a yo-yo.
It was like a yo-yo. Yeah, I know. I feel real bad for you now. But it's like an interesting thing because what you would do is you'd be like, God, I don't know what to do. I've never been in this before. I've never been married before. I've never been around this crazy person before. It feels irrational. I don't know what to do. And you would just pray.
Oh, yeah. I would just say, show me the next step. Show me the one thing I need to do, because I didn't know who to get help from or get access from. I'd never lived a life of seeing people get help from other people.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know where to start or who to dialogue with to get help. So I was just like, God, please show me what's the one thing I do or say. And then I would have this internal aha moment that was beyond my little 25-year-old wisdom at that moment, where it was like transcended that. And it was like, ask her this one question.
Yeah.
Say this one thing.
Speak this into her. Tell her to repeat this.
Right.
And so what happened is you started being able to walk me through these deep inner healing things. And I'd say vice versa. When we got married, you had a lot of rage issues. And typically what would happen is after the rage, you would then get to the vulnerable part, which if you're out there, you can actually get to the vulnerable part without the rage. And Justin has learned how to do that now, which is beautiful. But when he would get to the vulnerable part, then it'd be like, I would be able to walk you through what happened to you as a little kid, because all of our mess as adults was really from the trauma that we had gone through that we hadn't processed. And so we went through this journey of walking together through really deep inner healing.
Yeah.
And then reading books, because this is what I tell people. You don't want to change your life until you're willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the most beautiful things in life, is when you're willing to do what it takes. And I have clients who are in that. I had a client who, she would record every session we had, re-listen to it, write it out word for word.
Wow.
Make notes from it, come back and tell me what impacted her, because she wanted out. And she, dramatically changed her life. Anybody who's willing to do the work can get to the other side. But that's kind of, so it'd be like books would fall into our laps, and then
there's magical moments where someone would be like, you need to read this.
Yeah. And we'd be like, oh, okay. And the next step and the next step. And so we found ourselves in this pathway where healing was happening all the time, like on a weekly basis. And it wasn't always like me sitting down with Justin and being like, hey, why don't we crack open and see where we can get to in your life? Like, it wasn't like I was like being like a counselor coach to my husband. I wasn't like, let's see what I can get into. It was much more just like there was an atmosphere of healing, of heart healing, and we would lean into it. And when we would lean into it, like doors would open and our hearts would open and pain would be released and truth would get in, and we began changing our belief systems. I am a radically different human than I was when I married you.
Yeah,
because we changed belief systems from money. Like I grew up poor, feeling like I ruined everything, like I was a burden, like I would never be able to work a job or make money. I mean, belief systems of like I was unlovable, that I wasn't pretty, that I wasn't feminine, that I wasn't good at being a woman. Things like anxiety, depression, shame, self-hatred. Like there was so much stuff. And so we began this journey of healing, and it would be like just on the regular, God would... it was like a partnership between us and God.
Yeah.
In healing. Very similar to yours. But I think in our hidden season, there was a lot of us and God and people involved. Mm-hmm. And not that one is different than the other, just trying to explain that both can be helpful in different seasons. Mm-hmm. And so as that happened, there was this girl that ended up being around us.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, she was a good friend of us. And there was just kind of the byproduct of when we're willing to dig into something inside of us and find freedom, is it kind of just spills out organically to people around us. And so there was a lot of her dialoguing about her heart and her process and going through pain, where it was like, oh, it feels so organic to just share like, oh yeah, that's totally relatable to what we've been going through. Mm-hmm. And here's some of the things you can do to overcome that. And we watched as slowly something started shifting for her life. Mm-hmm. And after being away from her home for maybe a year or something, she ended up returning home, and people around her kept asking her, you're entirely different. What have you been doing? Like, this is not you.
So fun. And
she was like, I don't know. And then she's like, the only thing I can really point it to is I've been hanging out with my close friends, Abby and Justin, and they've been like talking to me and challenging me and, you know, kind of walking with me through stuff. And they're like, how much are you paying them? She's like, I don't pay them anything. They're like, you need to pay them for whatever's happening. This is legit.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because she came back, and that was the first person that ever paid us, and was like, I have to pay you.
She pursued us to pay us.
She pursued
us.
us.
I love that.
She was like, you need to be making money.
Like,
this is what you're made for.
I'm just being a friend. I'm just loving you. I can't be paid for this. And she's like, no, you have to. There's tangible results from my experience with you.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think for me, it was like just to be nice to her. I wasn't like, I didn't think I should start a business with this. It's interesting because I grew up believing that I had no gifts and talents, that there was just like nothing that I was good at, except I was good at people. Like I remember I took this speech class and you had to write like something you were talented at. And I wrote it about people. I was like, it's the only thing I know. I know people. I can hear their hearts and I can somehow connect to their heart and help it get a voice and be heard in a way that other people can't, I guess. So but I never thought super that it was like this great skill. I just thought it was the only thing I thought I had going for me. And so she's meeting with us and I'm like, I guess I'll do this just to be nice to you, but not because I ever thought I could make it into a job or get somewhere with it. And then all the people in her life want to meet with us because they keep seeing transformation. And then so that we finally start meeting with them, then all of their friends see their lives transformed. So then we start meeting with them. So we literally accidentally started a life consulting business.
Right.
You know what I love about you guys is getting to see your lives. Okay, here's the thing. Not everyone who surrounds themselves with powerful people like Abby and Justin will get transformation or will become powerful or healthy or whole. It has to do with the individual and their hunger and their willingness to confront things and grow and pull truth and receive love and receive being called out sometimes and having to look at your shit, which is not fun to look at. But what I love about your lives is watching the genuine overflow of love and health from the people around you. Like I see it all around you in your relationships. And I look at how well you do. You consult really well. You do business really well, and you give that away and you steward that profoundly well. I know so many people who have been transformed because of you guys. But I also watch the way you do friendship and relationship, and I have the pleasure of getting to do friendship and relationship with you guys, and you don't walk me through inner healing, but the fruit that's come from my life from being around you guys consistently is so beautiful and so profound. I watch the way it is leaking on to my husband and the way that it's affecting our marriage, and our marriage is already transforming, just getting to do everyday life relationship with you guys. And so what I love is the genuine overflow, because you can't conjure that up. Yeah. You can't conjure up fruit. You can't create something that isn't actually a genuine overflow. And I love getting to see how health has actually marked your lives and your relationships, and how well and how hard you guys fight for connection and relationship with the people that you love. So I've watched that, and it's just so fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I think that kind of talking about that process, there was a yes. And I know that, Sammi, there was a yes for you inside of your journey. And there was a yes for us to stay with it and just keep chipping away at what was right in front of us. And I know that a lot of people think that life is supposed to happen overnight for you. The dreams, the desires, whatever it is. And especially backing up, we're talking about in this season where everyone is like experiencing losses, transitions, and wondering what the future holds for them, especially when the whole world feels unstable. And it, like, a lot of times we want to have the immediate fix. Let's just fix 2020 and make it like it never happened. Let's just fix this year and everything that we lost. We're going to just 2021, we're just going to change over and it's going to be gone, right? No, there's going to have to be an application to being present with a process for every individual's life, no matter what they're pursuing or doing. But one thing that's promised is that anyone who's faithful to just digging into something will produce excellence.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we don't realize is that in the nothingness season of life, or the hidden season, or the secret place that you're talking about, like in that space, that is potentially setting us up for the rest of our entire lives, how we choose to handle that invitation. Yeah. And to me, if we were just talking about America's been handed this massive invitation. Yeah. No matter how or why all this stuff happened, it's happened. And so there's this invitation on the plate. Will you dig into your own hearts as a culture? Will you dig into your own personal lives? Will you begin to discover what's inside of you? Will you allow yourself to be transformed have your mind completely renewed about yourself, about life, about people, and those that say yes to it as they're in that nothingness. And that could be the next 5 years of life for a lot of people as they're in a transition, as life just got put on pause. But it's that,
or it could be not 5 years,
or it could not. I'm just saying,
let's just give some people out there a little bit of hope.
Yeah, it could be.
But there's always these demands on what it has to look like. And one of the things that we did is we just said yes to the process of excellence. And again, that excellent building process could happen over 5 years, 2 years, whatever.
And the thing is too, I mean, what I've loved, you guys had to walk through a lot more fire and hell than I did.
Right.
I had a very traumatic childhood, so I'm not comparing our histories. But in my adult life, I have had to overcome a lot of stuff, but I've had leadership my entire adult life and married life.
Yeah.
And so the beautiful part about leadership and about having someone who's ahead of you who actually has fruit in their life that you want is it can accelerate your process.
Yeah.
And I chose into that knowing and hoping and trusting that that would be the result, because there are things that I didn't have to learn through the fire that I got to learn because of wisdom. And wisdom is the thing that accelerates that. So it could be a 10-year process or a 20-year process if you don't have leadership. Mm-hmm. And if you're just trying to do it on your own, which is also known as self-sufficiency, which I am very well known for. But it can be accelerated into a 2-year journey if you have someone who's ahead of you, because they're passing down their breakthrough. So you get to step into some of that.
And that's where with a lot of people, I say, let my ceiling be your floor.
Yeah.
Like, don't make yourself have to go put your hand on the stove and burn it as well.
Yeah.
Just go, all right, that sounds good to me. It sounds like you've gone through a process. I'm going to adapt some of those things to my life, and so that you can run faster and farther.
Yeah, and I think what Sammi says is this is one of the reasons that I value her and her coaching. So as long as she's been meeting with people, she's always been meeting with people. But that sounds like I said the same thing and was repeating it, but I was meaning it in different ways. As long as she's been helping people, she's also been getting help by people. And there's something so beautiful about this journey of you can actually dig in and pull from resources like we did in our first years of marriage. We had so many books and people that influenced us and connected that the acceleration is so much easier if you're not trying to do your journey on your own.
Yeah. Which, as a side note, what is it? I want to ask this question of you, Sammi. What is it that you did? Because you talked about self-sufficiency, and that was a big monster for me that I had to, at varying levels, get rid of. And for those of you who haven't heard, there's a difference between capable and self-sufficient. And capable means I have the capacity or the ability to do something. And self-sufficiency is I have the capacity to do something, and I've decided I don't need or want anyone else to help me. I'm going to isolate myself in doing whatever I'm going to do. And so just that aside, for you, Sammi, in allowing people to speak into your life, what is it that you had to do in order to maybe move self-sufficiency out of the way or wrangle self-sufficiency? Because I think a lot of people who are listening, if we're inviting them into a journey of actually process and stuff like that, what do they have to do?
Self-sufficiency is such a beast. I mean, what it really is self-protection when it comes down to it. And what that's also known as is pride. And all pride sounds like a big monster in the church too. It's kind of like saying you're a narcissist. Yeah. It feels like a big word, and you're like, what? I just was telling a story about myself. What do you mean? But pride too is just, it's all fear. It's I'm afraid that I'm inadequate. So I'm going to put up this hard exterior.
Right.
And I don't want to need you, because if I do need you, then it proves I'm weak. Or if you do lead me, then it proves that I didn't have what it took, or whatever.
Or you could hurt me.
So it comes back to self-protection.
Yeah.
So it's this exterior that we build to protect us from pain ultimately. And for me, I could dance around on my self-sufficiency for years because I was the most powerful person I knew. It probably wasn't true, but I didn't have proof for having someone that would actually call me on my stuff. And so it felt really true because I wasn't subjecting myself to being wrong a lot. And so for me, like working through my self-sufficiency, it was a really slow journey that God actually walked me through, where at first I could hide in it because of my connection with God, because God has all of the answers and he's the safe one. So I'm just going to go here, and I'm not ever going to bring my vulnerability to people.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of people do that.
Oh yeah. And it feels so scary. And it was easy to get away with it for a long time too. And it
especially if you've grown up where people aren't safe.
Yes.
God really is the only safe place.
Right.
Yes. And for me, I turned into like the caregiver and the hero type dynamic in my family. And since I was 4 or 5 years old, started taking care of my older sisters and trying to take care of my parents. And so I learned at a young age that I was going to be the one to do things. And so I stayed in that for a long time. And it honestly probably wasn't until Spencer that I really got free from it. Because when we were friends for 2 years, and then we had talked about dating. He just asked me, is the door all the way closed between us for dating? And it was the first time that I had like a glimmer of maybe I do want to be with you. And then I freaked out after I told him the door wasn't all the way closed, shut down. A couple days later, I was trying to talk to him about it. And I was being very high stakes with it. And he pretty much just was like, hey, calm down. I'm not saying I want to marry you. I just want to like explore dating you. And he was like, I don't know if I want to be with you. It's a big red flag to me that you don't have any leaders in your life. It's a huge red flag that you're the strongest person in your world.
Yeah.
And
you're like, whoa,
got a punch to the gut. And I was also probably a little bit turned on.
Yeah, totally.
I just was
whoa.
like, you just called me on my shit.
Yeah.
And I like it. And I also hit pain in my heart because I had wanted leadership.
Right.
I had wanted someone in my life that was bigger than me. I had wished that there was a pastor or whatever, I didn't care who it was, that would come and scoop me up under their wing and lead me. I'd wanted to be seen and believed in like that.
Yeah.
And it hadn't happened. I had a lot of doors that got closed too. So it hit this thing in my heart where I was like, yeah, but I don't have anyone to be that for me. And what I would say to myself now that I didn't know then is, homegirl, pay for it. If you don't have a sweet mama who's come in to love you for free, go and pay for it.
Totally.
Create it however you can. And in that, and paying for it is just an exchange. It's an exchange of time. It's saying your life and your history is valuable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make an exchange because of what you walked through so I can glean from that.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot, especially in the Christian world, it almost feels like it dampens it for people if they have to pay for it.
Totally.
And I'm like, does it dampen it for you to buy the shirt that's hanging on the rack in the store? Or do you value it because you made an exchange?
Totally.
You wouldn't steal it and say you value it more because you stole it. And so he called me out, and I felt like I was called to a higher standard. And whenever I decided, and it turned me on, so I was like, I do want to date you. I've decided I like you.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks into dating, we started getting counseling.
Yep.
Literally 2 weeks into dating. That journey and having him, he actually passed down his value for that to me. Wow. And so that was a gift that I actually got to receive because of his values for it. And he also constantly poked on my self-sufficiency button because it was a turnoff for him because I felt hard. I felt shut down to him. It manifested as pride. And the more tender and vulnerable I was, and the more I let him impact me and let people impact me, I noticed the fruit in all my relationships. Yeah. I noticed the tenderness in my heart. I've always had a massive value for humility, and I'm like a strong person. I'm very, like, I have a strong voice, and I am independent, and I'm self-sufficient, and I am a leader to my core. But it was hard for me to overflow humility the way that I really desired to because of my self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
And so the more leadership I got and the more I was just willing to look at things and let people speak into my life, the more humility naturally overflowed, and I didn't have to talk more tender or try to be something I wasn't. I could be my full strength. I could bring my full strength, and yet it was laced with humility. And so did that answer your question?
Yeah, I like it.
How did I work through my self-sufficiency?
Well, I think it was really big because what you really said is I felt safe enough and loved enough to let down my guard and to allow those challenges to begin to happen is what I heard.
And to pursue. Letting people speak into your world and to pursue engaging people.
Yeah.
Even before, like a lot of times we can disqualify why, especially people who are good at self-sufficiency can disqualify why no one is powerful enough or big enough around them. And so you gave up that to actually engage it.
Right. But the love equity that Spencer built with you was enough for you to go, all right, I'm going to buy into that value system.
Yes.
And I'm going to actually begin to adopt it. And I think that that's really cool is when love affects us and has its way inside of us, we're willing to overcome so many things inside of our heart that we were so scared of before, because there's something about the power of love, especially the reflected unconditional love as it begins to get into our hearts that destroys and does away with fear inside of our hearts.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking is I just wanted to go back to kind of where we started this podcast, which was whatever season you're in, knowing there's two kind of things that stood out to me. Like part of why we were sharing our story of how we started Life Consulting is, we started it accidentally because we had been on our own journey and and then that led to us within our first year of meeting with people, we had a waiting list. We've never not had a waiting list. My waiting list at some points was like 3 years long to get into a meeting with me. Justin and me have seen over 4,000 clients in our time and then helped a lot of people through online courses. And it's amazing to see the impact. But I think I'm wanting to remind people wherever you're at in your journey, you may not see where it's headed. You might be in the beginning of Sammi's journey where she's single and just having to deal with all the pain from her childhood. And she doesn't know that that's going to end up helping tons of people at that point, besides what she's hearing whispered from God. And she doesn't know that she's going to end up marrying a man who's going to love her enough that it helps her let go of self-sufficiency, and that them together are going to be able to bring impact to women. And I think like I my whole life didn't know, what am I going to do for a job? Where am I going to end up? Like, what skills do I have? And I remember just that feeling of like, I don't know how to create something. I don't know where I'm headed towards. I don't know what is happening, but this faithfulness to be in the process and to say yes and to trust that it would lead somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the hope, that's one part of the hope that I was thinking. And then another part of the hope that I was thinking is, I loved what you said, Sammi, about when you would spend time with God, he would just tell you how much he loved you and how much he had plans for you. And I thought, I don't think that's everyone's experience with God, actually, that they don't go there and hear an affirming, loving, good fathering voice. And so the concept of, if you believe that you have a father that is with you and rooting you on, when you're in these seasons where maybe life is changing and you're not sure where it's going to end up or what you're doing, then you actually have the capacity to trust, engage what is in front of you, and keep growing.
Yeah. So I know that this is a season where people are needing hope. They're needing to believe that they're not alone and that they're not abandoned. And that's part of what we're also dialoguing here, is that when it felt like it was hiddenness, one of the things that came up, I would say for me, I can speak for me, is that hidden place also pushed on the button of I've been abandoned, right? It was felt more like the abandoned place, but it wasn't. It was the revealing place, because what it was doing is in the hidden place, it was revealing the abandonment that was inside of me that had always existed, and it was wanting to resolve that abandonment issue inside of me. And so some of you guys don't know what your next steps are inside of life. And there were days where I didn't know what the next step was going to be. I didn't know what my future was going to hold for me. And I didn't need to know it, because there wasn't grace for that at the moment. Because when I was saying yes to the process, I was also having to say yes for the grace for that day, which meant that day might just mean, okay, today I'm healing something about a childhood wound with my mom, with my dad, with regards to femininity, with regards to a belief system about me. And I was just saying yes to whatever it was going to deal with in that day. I wasn't going to get answers about what my whole future was going to hold. There wasn't going to get clarity of that until I actually got free from a lot of things inside of myself. And so some of you just need to be able to go, okay, I don't know where the next paycheck is going to come from. I don't know where the next job is going to come from, or the next relationship that I need is going to come from. I don't know how that's going to unfold. I don't need to know. Today, there's something happening inside of this invitation for me that I'm going to allow myself to participate in and see how that evolves. Go ahead, Sammi. You're going to say something.
And I just want to say too, like, in one of my huge motivators for working through my emotional pain and trauma was that I knew I would have more connection with God, and I knew I'd be able to overflow that love. So even when Abby was saying, like, that's not what all people experience in connection with God, that was one of my huge goals in my own journey, was like, the more that my heart is healed, the more I will just have like an even line.
Clearly.
And I can connect with that kind of love. And that's one reason why I started Alive and Free, because I wanted to be able to reproduce and give away that intimacy with God. But I knew it took the emotional journey to do that fully, so that I wasn't just pendulum swinging and being super spiritual without having the grounding and the backing. And so one thing that I want to say though is it's Abby and Justin's life that impacted mine so much, and that impacted Spencer's so much, to where we could even do what we're doing today. I actually probably wouldn't have trusted myself to be leading, because now we have over 2,000 clients. We've probably worked with over 4,000 just with our many things that we've done, and that we haven't necessarily directly coached, but we've been able to make that kind of impact because we went on our journey and we had leadership. And there's so much that I gleaned from you guys. And so what I just want to say is, like, if you are one of those people that's in that season, which I know most of the world is right now, a lot of people are trying to figure out to practically, like, what can I do that's online? What can I do that's not a normal 9 to 5? What can I do? And they're trying to build something. If that is you and you want to go on this journey, and whether you want this for yourself or whether you want to get healthy so that you can lead and give that away someday, I think both are honorable things. I think, like, the most honorable part is that you're willing to look at your junk and take ownership for it and heal, so that you can give away and lead with authenticity and with power and with breakthrough. If that's you and you're feeling like, man, I want more connection with God, or I want to get healthier, I want to be healthy for my family one day, or I want to be able to be a consultant one day, I know that you guys have a course. And that course, like, it's all of the foundational stuff to go on that journey. And so even if you're like, I don't have a value for emotional health, but I want connection with God, going on that emotional journey is the thing that will open that door fully, so that you can step into the things that God has for you and wants to give you.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. We created Living Fully Alive, and we've started signups, and there's early bird registration, which means you can get $100 off the course.
Yeah.
If you register early. And we made the course for people who want to be life consultants. I get this question all the time. I want to be a life consultant. What do I do? And I tell them, like, obviously my story is that we went on the journey of healing us, because then we had authority to help other people on their journey of healing. And so what we do is we take people through, we created a course because I had like we had 1,000 people. I asked who wanted to learn about life consulting, and I had 1,000 people email me that day. And I was like, oh, this is like a thing that people want to learn and grow in. And so we made this course, and it really is the foundations of what you need to know of how humans function, of what's going on inside of you. It's what's going on inside of your heart and your brain, how to work with them together, how to transform what is driving your life, how to know what is driving your life, and how to heal, how to get connected to validation and empowerment. And it's everything. It's the pillars of what we have seen transform so many people's lives. When we talked about like healing just kind of flowing around us, it's because there's some core values and understandings we have of how humans operate. And so we kind of lay it all out. And we've had counselors go through it who said it changed their life.
Psychologists, doctors.
Yeah. People who want to be life coaches. And it's not like, here's this life consulting school where you'll know everything about life consulting afterwards. This is going to help you go on a journey where you get deep in your own stuff and you get healing and freedom, because we so believe that the more we have, we will naturally give away.
Yeah. And the other part of this too is what it does is it equips leaders to be very effective inside, because once you can understand not only how you operate, but then you're understanding how other people operate, it readjusts the entire dynamics of how you're flowing with the team of people around you, fellow employees, stuff like that. It causes you to become a very effective person when you can understand humanity. And so that's even been very, very foundational for a lot of pastors who have jumped in and gone, okay, I'm falling apart inside of my community of people. I'm not knowing how to manage my body of people. And I'm seeing messes happen with them. How can I help them? How can I help myself? And so that's been a huge for them as well.
Yeah. So it's really, and then what we found, because we made it so that it's about you connecting to yourself and getting healing and wholeness, it really works for people who don't want to be life consultants.
Yeah.
Basically, if you want to be a life consultant, it's going to take you on an emotional journey that then you can help lead others on. If you just want to go on an emotional journey, you can also do that. You don't have to lead anyone else afterwards on it. But either way, you're going to get...
No, you have to.
You have to. You're forced to. So either way, you're going to feel empowered in your life. And I think one of the things, we don't promise that in our course, which I think it's like a 4-month course. Is that right?
14 week.
Yeah, 14 week. It is not something that like, oh, your life, everything will be different. Everything will be different from the inside out. And things will begin externally changing because our internal worlds always create things externally. Yeah. But what it is that we feel most passionate about is you're going to be able to face life afterwards.
Right.
Because you're going to know how to process through pain. You're going to know how to connect to God. You're going to know how to not abandon yourself. You're going to be going on these journeys that help you not just in this moment, but figure out how to live well.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, Sammi, how can people get a hold of you and find out more about what you guys are up to?
This is a Spencer question. You can go to...
Well, while you're figuring that out, you can go to justinandabby.com if you want to sign up for Living Fully Alive this year. And again,
early bird registration ends when? November something? Like
November 15th maybe or 16th, somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll want to get on that as soon as possible. Sammi, you got that information
up
yet?
I have it. Yeah. You can go to yourheartfree.com.
yourheartfree.com, and you can find out more about them. And also you can go to justinabby.com and download our From Crappy to Happy guide. It's in 7 steps.
It's free.
It's free. It's a short ebook, and
it's hysterical.
It's funny, and it'll help you get happy in the season.
Dips your toes into some emotional health.
Yeah, a little toe dipping.
A little dough tipping.
A little dough tipping. Sammi, I love having you on here.
Yeah, you're so wonderful.
Being here.
I'm glad you're with us.
Me too.
Are you going to come back again?
Yeah.
We'll talk about more stuff.
Give me something to talk about.
Give me something to talk about. I got things to say.
I'll talk about it.
I'll talk about it. All right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Bye-bye.